Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Untitled Mike Ashmore Podcast. My name is... Any guesses? Anyone? Mike Ashmore. You guys can find me on social media at Mashmore98. This is the true podcast. The first run was kind of a test run to see if we could do it, not do it. Looks like we can do it. So we have a true podcast-style interview with my very good friend Lucas Irvine. Pitched in Somerset, was on their championship-winning team in 2015. Came back in 2017, was with Sugarland and High Point for the last several years. Looks like he'll be back in High Point this year. Nothing official there yet. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But here's the first part of my chat with my good friend, Lucas Irvine. Lukey, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you, man. Entering your 10th year of pro ball, but your 6th year of being one of my best friends in baseball. It's good to have you on, man. Good to see you're staying safe. How's everything going?
Oh, my God. Thanks for having me on. That's quite the intro. I appreciate that, and I didn't realize I've been playing so long. Maybe I can start telling girls that I've been playing for a decade. I don't know if that'll make me look better or worse, but I appreciate you having me on, and, yeah, we've been good friends for, seems like a lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It feels like it's been forever. I've been covering, this will be my 18th year. Whenever the league does get started, it'll be my 18th year covering the league. It feels like you said, like we've known each other forever. So I've had the pleasure of having you over here and making you steak dinner and then kicking your ass in video games. So it's been a while.
Okay. Well, we'll discuss that as it comes up. But, yeah, there's a time or two that may have happened.
Yes, it may have happened. I think you've gotten me once or twice as well, but I feel like
when I had the Penguins, I got you once when I had the Penguins.
Yes, glad to see you still remember. So when those wins are so few and far between, you got to remember those. So.
Oh, that's lovely. That's lovely. Well, I'm dealing with Meat Hat over here in hockey, and now I got you. So.
Yes, the infamous Meat Hat on Twitter, one of your best friends. So.
Yes.
Yeah, so I guess first off, man, what are you kind of doing to stay busy here? I mean, the season was supposed to get going here in a couple of weeks. I'm sure your preparation is kind of all messed up, so I guess what are you kind of doing over there back home to kind of keep yourself busy and occupied and staying paid as well?
Yeah, good question. This is actually my first off-season in quite some time. I've been playing winter ball pretty much for the last 6 years to some degree. So this is kind of the first time I've had, 4 to 6 months off, and I've enjoyed it. And a lot of people who go through the same situation also enjoy it because it's kind of a time to relax and focus on the personal side of life that you kind of forget when you play 10 months out of the year. But no, we're staying busy here in Kansas City, living with a couple of lifelong friends. It's been a great situation, and then I've been actually trying to do some lessons on the side with the current situation with the virus and all that. That's been put on hold. So I've been continuing to DoorDash of all things and do Postmates and some food delivery. And it could be a little more lucrative than people think if you once you figure out the nooks and crannies of it. But yeah, it's been keeping me busy, especially the last couple of weeks as everyone's kind of been holed up at home. There a lot more deliveries have been being called in, so been trying to make a few extra dollars doing that, and hopefully bring people something besides all the frozen food they stocked up on.
Yeah, it's a pretty funky time, as you mentioned. I guess any crazy stories from doing the DoorDash thing for a little while now? Anything people like getting weirded out that like you're touching their food or anything like that? Or anything crazy?
Yeah, just in the broad picture, just how fast everything's changed just within days as far as, a friend of mine asked me the other day, he said, how many people they want a no-contact delivery, they just want you to drop it and go, and like 3 or 4 days ago, I said, about 20%, not that much, and then within 2 days, almost 100% of the people, have that as like under their notes. When you order food, you can kind of give instructions, and now almost everyone says just leave it at the door. So you can kind of see like how the panic is, maybe not panic, but just the precautions are setting in, day by day. And even like with my parents, a week and a half ago, I was like, well, stuff's going on. We probably should, not hug or embrace or whatever. And of course, my mom's like, I'm your mother. I'm giving you a hug. And of course, she gave me a hug. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
And then a few days later, I see her again, and we didn't come within, it was like she was a catcher. Like, we didn't come within 60 feet of each other. So, yeah, it's really interesting just to see how just on a large scale, human behavior is rapidly changing, and I think for the good. People trying to be, it's better safe than sorry. But actually, it looks like my roommates are door dashing some food right now, so that just furthers my point. Everyone's doing it, including my household. When I don't even know. So
quite the demand this time of year with everything that's going on. But we mentioned it earlier, but I guess just the preparation for the season. I guess you would be pretty far along in your throwing program and your throwing process to get ready for a season that was getting ready to start in mid-April, end of April. I guess how does that change with everything that's going on right now?
I was about a month in, 4 weeks in to my throwing program. Feeling great, actually. I attest a lot of that to the extra time off. But, since everything happened, I do a lot of my indoor throwing at my junior college at Maple Woods, where I played here in town. So what ended up happening is one day the coach wasn't there, and I text Marty, and I said, hey, what's going on? And he's like, oh, we're at a coach's meeting. And from then on, that place locked up because of the virus, which is, again, I support that, but
Sure.
It made me change my plans and all that. And eventually, I started throwing outside, and I got 2 or 3 days into that, and it's been either cold or raining ever since here in Kansas City. And then with working and stuff, it's been hard to schedule. So it feels like I haven't picked up a ball in about 8 to 10 days, but it may be less than that. But yeah, we've had a lot of weather lately, so. It's March and April in Kansas City.
Yeah. Do you worry about, obviously the start of the season is kind of uncertain for everybody right now. Do you kind of worry about being ready at the start, given this could all change on a dime?
Yeah, just because as players we're all different, and especially in our league, in the Atlantic League anyway, it's guys who've got a lot of pitches thrown, a lot of at bats, a lot of miles on their knees, their arms, and all that. So. Some of us, that preparation process is a little longer than normal, just to be safe. And I hope that the people at the top making decisions for all of us realize that and allow for enough time. Otherwise, the product will suffer, and B, there's more injuries to be had in the situation if we don't have enough time to get ready. But I think there's enough heads working together, and I think the best situations will prevail. But I know right now everything's day to day, and even all the way up to the big leagues, there's really no certain timetable on anything. So as players, we understand that too, and we're doing everything we can. But with gyms closed down and bad weather and stuff, I might go 2 or 3 days without even running. So it's just push-ups, sit-ups, old military or prison style workouts, however you want to call it. But, we're doing what we can. I think as players, I talk to a lot of players around the league still, and everyone's trying to maintain the routine or abbreviate it or modify it, and just kind of get the work in that you can and control what you can. That's kind of an old saying that goes around many sports, but baseball for sure. So that's what we're doing.
Yeah, I do kind of want to show off my research on you. There's a lot of stuff I had to look up online. I know you pretty well, but there's some stuff that I didn't know when I looked up online. So I do kind of want to ask you some career stuff too, and kind of delve into that a little bit if we could.
Oh, I might learn some stuff too then. All right, well, let's see what you got.
Well, it's some pretty easy stuff here, but I mean, how does a Midwestern boy like yourself end up at Northwestern State University of Louisiana, sir?
That year, that was my second year of junior college. I was having a really up and down year. I think I'd thrown a no-hitter or something that year and kind of got myself on a bigger radar. And then people showed up to see me, and, it didn't work out, or I had a couple duds. Kind of an inconsistent year. And I'd fielded some offers from Southern Miss, Coastal Carolina, some local Division II or closer to my region, Division II schools.
Sure.
And I was kind of looking for a full ride, and so I'd waited way past. I felt like I was deep into the summer, and everyone had signed. It was close to June maybe before I even signed. And then this school, Northwestern State University of Louisiana, called, and I was like, "Oh no, sir, I've already been to junior college. I'm looking for a D1." And they explained everything to me, and they had enough money left. Very few schools at that time do. but they had enough scholarship money left to give me a full ride. And it wasn't just the money. I really meshed well with the coaching staff and the hitting coach of all things. We really got along down there, and I was looking for warm weather, as a lot of baseball guys are. It's being in the Midwest and playing in February. It's either going to be 80 or 20, and either one, it's kind of hard to adjust because the day before was different. So weather was a big factor. Scholarship. It was one of those things where just a lot of the stars just aligned, and I was lucky enough to get a late full ride.
Yeah, saw the White Sox drafted you in 2010. I also saw your college stats in that junior year. You pitched your ass off that year. Was there ever a thought of signing there? Was there ever a thought of them pursuing you and signing you? I guess how did it all kind of work out that you ended up going back for that senior year?
It was kind of strange because I hadn't talked to many. I was talking to many scouts, but I hadn't talked to the White Sox regional guy that much. But I do remember him because he was Australian, and he was the only Australian scout I'd ever talked to. So I did remember him, and when I was drafted, I kind of chuckled to myself. Of course, on draft day, especially your first time through, you have all these wild ideas in your head.
Sure.
Anybody will tell you, super optimistic. You take a roller coaster of emotion, all this stuff. But when they ended up drafting me, I kind of laughed, like, man, I only talked to him once or maybe twice, and I feel like I didn't pitch well in front of him. And we talked briefly, but he had told me a story where he had seen me running. I pitched on Friday night, and then we had a day game on Saturday. And he had seen me running down, and we were, I think, in southeastern Louisiana, just north of New Orleans. And he'd seen me running out on the roads or something, like miles from the park. And back then I was super into cardio, and I still kind of am, but back then it was crazy. So I would run 5 or 6 miles the next morning, and I guess he saw me, and that kind of stuck with him and put me a little higher on his list. And I mean, it was the 40-something round, but I was so grateful. And my problem back then is I was young and dumb, and the rest of it. But
yep.
I had a number in my head that I had advisors and stuff, kind of my worth. And then when the White Sox gave me the initial offer, I was like, oh, well, this is what I had in my head. And they're like, well, let us call you back in a couple weeks. Let's get some guys signed or not signed and see if we can come up at all. And ultimately we didn't, agree on a number, which, some parts of me have regrets about, but most of me doesn't. And then I went back and I really enjoyed my time at Northwestern. So I was like, well, I'll have another good year, a senior year, and I know I'm going to take a financial hit, but maybe I'll move up on a draft board and be a little more relevant, or do something crazy. So I think the dreamer in me just attached my wagon to that and moved on to my senior year. So
yeah, were you just a senior sign for the Rays? Did they just give you the standard $5,000 and a plane ticket and that was it, or how did that all work out?
Yeah, I think it was $2,500. If you have that other $2,500, you might float it my way. But if these guys are getting $5,000 now, I'm gonna get redrafted. I'll be the last pick. But no, that's how it went. And it was kind of the same thing with that scout. I wish I remembered his name, but I remember him. He was very real with me. And after I'd met with him on campus my senior year, I kind of felt like I wasn't the reason he was there. He was there to look at someone else or something. Like, that's fine, because that happened a lot. We had a lot of talent on that team. And then he ended up signing me and calling me and sending me my contract and plane ticket, and, the rest is history. But that time, and with the NFL draft and the baseball draft coming up, it always kind of reminds me of especially my first time through that draft. It was a pretty intense, interesting time, and there's really no way to prepare for it when you're going through it yourself, So.
Yeah, looking at that Princeton Rays roster, I know things didn't really work out the way you wanted to in that organization, but I do see a name, Dave Kubiak, on that roster. What was a young Mr. Kubiak like back in those days?
Well, he was pretty off-putting. Well, I remember what a beaut. If we're going to go down the Kubiak road already, then, get to plug that charger in.
Oh, boy.
That recorder. But, no, Kubiak, we flew in at the same same time for the mini camp, after the draft, you go down to spring training in Port Charlotte for 10 days or 6 days or whatever, do your physicals, throw a few bullpens, whatever, and then they assign you to whatever short season's about to break. And anyway, we get in the van, and it's one of those big, church-style vans, 15-passenger vans, and one of the Rays trainers picks us up, and we got all our bags in the very back, and then the very back bench, there's Dave Kubiak sitting all by himself, 6'7", 200, and he'll tell you he wasn't ever over 270 pounds, but he had to have been 280 pounds, and just sprawled out. And we're supposed to be filling out this paperwork, name, address, blood type, whatever, the standard stuff. And and we're like crammed. There's like 5 or 6 of us crammed in the front two, aisles of this van, and then Kubiak's got the whole back to himself because he's so big. And he starts asking guys, we're like nervous, hi, I'm Luke, I'm from Kansas City, whatever, filling out paperwork. Here's Kubiak at the time, because I guess I hadn't known a whole lot of people from New York, but he had a pretty thick Long Island accent.
Yes.
Which you may be privy to, but
oh yes.
But he said something about, hey, he's chirping at the driver up front. He's like, hey, fella, or something like that. He didn't say fella, but to me it was along those lines. He's like, hey, can I get a dip? You got a dip up there? And he's, and the rest of us are trying to be quiet, respectful, keep our head down, like not do anything wrong. And he's asking the trainer for a dip and all this stuff, and not filling out his paperwork whatsoever. And from then on, and he goes, I thought this was Florida. Where are the beaches? Because we were at the airport, and oh man, it was just one of those. You couldn't make it up just because it was just so like a first time, like first time in pro ball, and here's this personality that to this day he's one of my best friends, as you know, and,
yes.
and one of the strongest personalities I know too. So,
that's one way of putting it. Yes.
Yeah, very strong personality, and he was one of the first 6 people I met in professional baseball. So oddly enough, Kevin Seitzer's son, was drafted by the Rays too, and he's from Kansas City, and I played for his dad's Little League organization, like a travel organization, and we'd played ice hockey together back in the day, and we didn't even know each other got drafted together, and then all of a sudden we were with each other on the plane, so he was in that van too, and he's not short, he's like 6'5", so yeah, as you can imagine, in the middle of Florida in June, it's 100 and whatever degrees with 110% humidity, and there's Kubiak barking about a dip and, whatever, just not doing what he's supposed to, and oh man, there's stories forever on him.
Yeah. So Rays thing doesn't really work out the way you want it to. You end up pitching back home for most of the next 2 years, I guess. What is that like? Kind of, is it take pressure off of you? Does it put pressure on you pitching in front of friends and family and stuff like that? What is that whole experience like pitching in Kansas City?
Well, first of all, I don't know why, but I just assumed, like, once the Rays released me, I just assumed I wasn't a baseball player anymore. Like, well, that was it. I had a year and a half, and now it's time to, like, finish school and get a job. Call me crazy, and I look at 21-year-olds now, and I'm like thinking, man, they're smarter than I was, because I just thought I was done. But it was almost a relief, because I was like, oh, here's another opportunity. And I, grew up around here, and the T-Bones were a big thing when they came to town, because the Royals weren't doing so well, and it was just kind of a newer thing that they had a lot of games between innings, and it was just the independent baseball thing, and it's a good, fun time for fans. So I was honored, and actually the way it worked out is my hitting coach from Maple Woods, Kenny Hook, close personal friend of mine, he was the hitting coach the year before with the T-Bones, and was the interim manager until they could find another one. He ended up interviewing for the job, landed it, and that's kind of because I knew him and he knew my abilities, and he was willing to kind of overlook my numbers, and he needed a rookie to fill his staff, and I was in town, there again, the stars aligned there, and very early on that team, I was comfortable. We had a great veteran core, Josh Rainwater, Devin Anderson, great veteran core, especially for a younger group of guys, and then Kenny and Bill Sobey and all those, the coaching staff, Frank White, obviously. It was a very comfortable place for me where when I was with the Rays, I wasn't. I put a lot of pressure on myself with the Rays. So Kansas City was actually, it was like the more friends and family I could get there, the better. And oftentimes they would be removed from the stadium for drunken, rude behavior. So I didn't even have to worry about them after the fifth inning.
Oh, boy.
It actually, as far as pressure, by the grace of God, for whatever reason, after playing the whole time I was with the Rays, I had all sorts of pressure on me, mostly from myself. It's just a competitive atmosphere, and that's great. But at the time, just my tiny brain wasn't ready for anything like that. So I think Kansas City coming back here and pitching in a professional environment, and it's a nice place. Like it's really fun, a lot of fans. Like it's a great environment, and it went the opposite as far as pressure. It relieved all the pressure, and it felt more like high school baseball and back to my dominating days. So I think it helped me channel that again.
How many people look at your stats and think you did nothing in 2014?
Most people, including, I think, did you ask me twice? No, I'm just kidding. A lot of people just assume injury, which I, for the most part, have been uninjured in my career. So most people just think I was injured that year, like it's a classic Tommy John little gap in the stats. But no, I was in Japan, playing independent ball in Japan, of all things.
Yep.
It wasn't ever promised to me, but I thought I had a very good chance of moving up to the big leagues there from that team, and I did. But I ended up getting hurt there on a comebacker to my face. I blocked it with my hand and broke my hand. So I was injured during the signing period or signing deadline for foreigners in that league. So that's a whole other story. But I was in Japan that year, and that was a 9 or 10 month whirlwind. That'd be a couple of chapters in my book.
I remember you telling me the first interview you ever did was February 2015 when you signed over in Somerset. I remember you telling me the mounds were softer there. Is that right?
Oh yeah. I mean, don't even get me started. Get the bleep button ready, because the way they do it is, especially like at the lower levels, they basically rebuild the mound, which is barely even. I mean, we're talking maybe 6 to 12 inches off flat ground. Very low.
Yeah.
But they rebuild it with sand from the beach or chalk from the foul line. And both of those things do not firm up a mound. But their philosophy, and I kind of understand why they do it the way they do. It's because that's kind of how mounds originated there, and so people learn to pitch that way. So when they get on, a firm, tall clay mound or even an artificial mound, like High Point has, they feel like it's real rigid. It's not how their body is. Like their body responds to that give, and when they pitch, there's where your foot is. There's obviously a massive hole, and then where you land, it's even a bigger hole. And I feel like there's a mound of dirt like up to your knees. It's so hard to pitch out of the stretch over there, and it was just a big learning curve, because every pitch, your mind was either on that or if the umpires are going to call a balk, and that's a whole other issue. But it kind of like took my mind off of my attack, because I was like, okay, I don't want to fall. I don't want to do this. It's not an excuse. It took me a while to make the adjustment, and I'm a stubborn person, so I kept thinking, like, why don't they just fix it? Why do I have to change? But that's how they pitch there. And then I pitched in some big league stadiums and stuff, and they do have more traditional like clay mounds. They're still soft, but much more traditional to like what we're used to. So
yeah. You finished your 2013 season in Camden, so I'm kind of curious as to what the connection was that got you to Somerset in 2015. Was there someone on that team? Was there someone coaching staff-wise? What got you to Somerset?
The Camden thing was interesting because I got traded over to the Jackals for the playoffs. Kansas City got eliminated, and then me and Matt Padgett, one of the best teammates ever, we got traded over to the Jackals in the Can-Am League. Finished the season there, took it all the way to Game 7, lost a heartbreaker. And then, crazy story there, so I was getting on the plane to go back home, and he was taking a train to go get his car that was at York or something, because he was in the Atlantic League before.
Yep.
He had a car there or something. Crazy story. So he goes over to York to get his car, and I'm at Newark Airport getting ready to fly back to Kansas City. My bags are underneath the plane. We're boarding in 20 minutes, and I get a call from Padgett thinking like, oh, thanks, what a season, like, thanks for going on this crazy trip with me, blah, 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 because we did everything together because we were like the two players traded together. And instead, I answered the phone, I was like, what's up, man? He goes, don't put your bags on the plane. I'm going to be in your parking lot in 3 hours. I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, we're getting signed to Camden. They got like 7 games left, and they have to win like 6 of them to make the playoffs. I was like, oh. And there was like talks of this, so it wasn't completely a shocker, but I thought I would have heard, a little sooner. And so there I am in Newark and International Airport with my bags already under the plane. I go ask the lady, kind of explain the situation. Somehow, like, they get my bag off. It was like maybe not quite underneath, but it was about to be or something. And I just go back through security, get all my stuff, and wait for Paget. And then we drive from Newark to Philly. And then I know what we did. We drove from Newark to Bridgeport and played a 7-game series in sideways rain.
Oof! Wow, Bridgeport and sideways rain. That's the dream right there.
Yeah, but I thought it was cool because I'd played with guys who came from the Atlantic League, and I was still young, and like, this is the league to be in if I want to like keep climbing the ladder. So I was tickled. But the funny part is I had just pitched Game 6, so my availability wasn't for a few days, and so they just put me in the pen, and then we ended up getting eliminated. And I think I pitched the very last inning of the end of the season for the team. They just so we could say we used you,
Yep.
They did all that work to get me, and I just sat in the pen for, a week, and then finally at the end, after the last inning, and got out of a bases-loaded 1-out jam.
Attaboy.
So, but yeah, that's how Camden went.
But, so how'd we get you to Somerset then?
I went to Japan between that, and then John Hutton, just how he works, he just called me. I think I'd been on his radar before, and he'd called and reached out, not with an offer, just checking my interest or, putting out his feelers, and I'd already committed or signed to go to Japan. So he had tried the year before, and we had still been in communication, and he'd kept tabs on me and stuff like that. So he just reached out, and that's what he's good at. He's very good at staying on top of things, and the whole player procurement thing. He's very thorough, and he was on, you know what I mean? He called me, checked with me. I said, all right, well, give me a day or two, and then 24 hours passed. He called me, you know what I mean? He called me again and stayed on it, and there was nothing to not like. I just, everything kind of happened quick, and I was like, well, let it simmer, and then, yeah, it sounds great. I just want to think it through. So, but yeah, it was a no-brainer, and my career really took off.
I remember 2015 season, it's about the end of August, it's just before start of a game, and I get the call that I have to go down to the clubhouse and talk to you because you're signing with the Diamondbacks organization. I remember how kind of conflicted you were with leaving that team, and obviously you had a great opportunity that you couldn't pass on, but how difficult was it to leave that team at that time? I mean, obviously you're taking a great opportunity, but knowing maybe what that team was going to go on to do, how difficult was that for you to make that decision? Because I know you really, really, really took some time to think that over.
Yeah, and I was really surprised by the call from the Diamondbacks because we had talked early in the year, and guys fly off the shelf, in the first half in the Atlantic League. Guys get picked up left and right, and then it kind of dissipates and few and far between. So that late in the season, I wasn't even ready for something like that. And I feel like I kind of had a couple shaky starts, which also, I'd been throwing well all year, and then, some August fatigue or whatever it was, I had a few shaky starts, and then they called me. So I was like, oh, man, I'm bought into this Patriots thing, and I think we're going to win the whole thing. Like, this is, I felt like a team, this is a family. Like, I really wanted that ring with that group of guys. So the fact that I was so shocked that I was even getting an offer, and I was so enthralled with our season in Somerset, that was really why I was conflicted. And I went straight to Brett Jody. I was like, hey, I just got a call from the Diamondbacks. They want to sign me, but isn't this kind of late? And the first thing he said, he goes, man, that's awesome. He goes, well, the first thing he said was heck. And then after that, he said, that's awesome. He goes, make sure, or try to see if there's a spring training invite, because that'll definitely make it worth it, rather than if they're just borrowing you for a couple starts. You know, you don't want to ruin something here. And he said, he goes, we'll get somebody, you know, don't worry about us. We'll be fine. But, you know, we'd love to have you and just do what's best for you. But him mentioning that spring training invite. So I called Carminucci back, the scout for the Diamondbacks, and I said, does that come with an invite to spring training? And he said, of course, you know, and I hadn't asked, but I'm glad that was already, you know, sorted out on their end. And they had been on me a while, like I said, but they just, with my age and, you know, they just needed an opening. Excuse me. They just needed an opening for me, apparently. So they sent me to high A, which I was a little old for that league, but it worked out for a little while anyway.
Yeah, I think there are going to be some people listening to this who are kind of curious about the process of what that is like when a team reaches out to you. Is that just, you know, a scout calling? Is that a scout calling the team? Is that a scout going through whether a guy has an agent or not? How does that whole process work with someone from a team reaching out to say, hey, we want to sign you?
Man, everyone's a little different. With me, it was very direct. I think with some guys, they definitely go through the agent, or the agent will say, hey, in a couple of days, get ready, the Red Sox might give you a call, or whoever, you know, X team. But for me, it was very direct and very simple. No glitz and glamour, you know. It was, hey, Lucas, Chris Carminucci, you know, and I had his number, so I knew. Said, Chris Carminucci, we got a spot in high A if you want to come pitch. You know, it was very direct. And I was like, oh my God, well, I'm honored, you know, thank you. Yes, sir. Give me a minute. You know, let me talk to, you know, I'm here in Somerset. We're about to play a game, you know. Thank God I wasn't pitching. I probably would have hit the first 9 batters. But just because your mind just goes through, like, oh, not even just the honor of it, just the logistics, like, oh, I got to pack up my Xbox and I got to get a suitcase, you know? I got to move my life again, and stuff that ball players are used to. But yeah, it was very quick and simple. I think other guys who have maybe more of a tenure or have some big league time, or, you know, agents that are a little more involved or whatever, they tend to go through that channel early, and then they'll officially call the player when they do, I believe. But for me, it was just very direct. And I actually had to tell my agent once I got to Arizona doing my physical, I said, oh, by the way, I got picked up in all this craziness. You know, from that phone call and to the time I was in Arizona doing my physical, I don't know if 24 hours passed. It all went really fast. So,
jeez.
Yeah, and I flew out of Newark that night, and it was like 48 degrees, and I landed in, it was an overnight or whatever, and I landed in Phoenix. It was like 101. Like, well, we just doubled the temperature.
Yeah, well, at least your trademark black T-shirt would be paying off there in Arizona. So.
Oh, yeah, just soaking up all the rain.
Yeah, seriously. I remember you came back to be a part of the playoffs, not to play in them, but obviously just to watch them. I remember you went to the Rangers game the night before everything was getting ready to start. You came back to the area. Why was it that important to you to kind of get back to the area and you know, be a part of that?
Well, number one, my car was here. No. No, I had a bunch of stuff, but it worked out perfect where, unfortunately, we got bounced out of the playoffs in the Cal League. And but the timing of it worked out where the Atlantic League playoffs were just starting. I was already going to go back to spend some time to collect all my stuff and get my car and drive back. But I was able to stay with teammates like Zelensky and Donnie, and, you know, anyone would say, hey, come stay, you know. But yeah, the timing worked out. So, and I was going to Mexico that winter, so I had 2 or 3 weeks to kill. So I spent maybe 5 or 10 days in the New Jersey area, and they're playing the Ducks. And of course, you know, you got to see the Patriots-Ducks playoff series.
Yep.
It's going to take 4 hours, like the Red Sox and Yankees. It's just how you guys do it up there, apparently. But yeah, it is very, very strange to be on the other side of the wall, especially on a team like I played 100 and something games there, and it's just, the game looks different from that side from the seats and all that. So it was for a good reason, but man, the whole time I was just looking in the dugout, like, oh, I know what they're talking about, or get his attention, and I was like a little schoolgirl trying to get all the players' attention. But it was a lot of fun watching them win that.
Was it tough to not be a part of it? Obviously, ultimately, it feels like you made the right decision, but was it tough to not, be a big part of that like you wanted to?
Yeah, in a sense, it definitely was because, it's like, oh, I might have been pitching this game or whatever, but for me, I've been fortunate to be in, not a bunch, but several different playoff runs, and I just I think we all do, I just turn into a big, like, whatever you need from me, like, especially with Brett Jody, it was like, Brett, if you need me to throw one pitch and that's it, or if you need me to start game one, it's like, you kind of turn into a company man when the playoffs come, because it's like, all right, now we've settled the scores all season. We know what we have. You know what we're working with. Now let's play for some medal. And so I just become like whatever you need me to do. So I think in my head or in my heart, it's like, well, they need me to be out of the way and be in the stands and drinking beer while they can't. And like I was like, my role, I guess, is just to be a fan. But yeah, it was hard. Not being in the dugout mainly. But they picked up Roy Merritt, phenomenal, especially playoff pitcher, but phenomenal arm, crafty as hell. But yeah, I was just so proud of him and proud to at least be a part of a bulk of it. And I knew Somerset, Steve, and Patrick, all of them. If they wanted, I played enough games. They're going to send me a ring in the mail. So I was rooting a little harder than normal. So, and they did, and it's a gorgeous ring.
Yeah, you mentioned playing for Brett, and I was going to get to that, but I might as well ask you about it now. Obviously, we're taping this on a day there's a national holiday. It is Brett Jody's birthday.
Oh, nice.
Yes, heck. But what was it like playing for Brett? Because anytime I mention what a great guy he is, I covered him as a player. I've known him for 17 years. Anytime I mention that, it's you're a homer, you're kissing his ass because you have to cover the guy. But from someone who actually played for the guy for 2 years, what is it like to have Brett as your manager?
Oh, he's great. Definitely has the players, not just what we do on the field, but just the players like being in mind. It's one of those classic, like, doors always open, come knock. If you're having troubles with your girlfriend or what, just whatever, or if you're tired of, the travel's kind of getting to me, because we've got a lot of guys in that league who don't have to be there. They're doing it because they love it, and then when outside life happens, things get hard. I just remember him always being like very approachable for those things, if need be. And then when it was baseball time, it was baseball time. And I've never seen a manager do more early work than Brett. I mean, because he's got Scott Kelly, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's willing to do whatever for the players. I think the front office adores him. I would assume he does very little wrong. There's nothing he does wrong. But I would consider him a player's manager, but usually a lot of players' managers don't have a great relationship with the front office. It would seem, just because they're working for the players and getting us more stuff where sometimes there's a line drawn, where at Somerset it's really not. And Brett's a great, he bridges that gap, for everything really well. And he's been there forever. He's earned it. And that experience of just being in that spot and knowing the league and knowing the travel and the ownership and the arms and all of it, it's very comforting. And again, like I said, with Kansas City, comfort is huge for me. And I think a lot of players, it's just easier to play when you're comfortable. So I thought he did a great job of communicating, fun, very fun. always doing whatever for a rally, whatever goofy thing we got going on, he just jumps on board. I remember one year, I guess it would have been in 17. I get my years mixed up, but early on, me and Kubiak, we started writing quotes on the tape that puts the lineup card in the dugout. We'd write a little quote because everyone looks at that thing all the time,
yes.
20 times a game. So you probably remember, we started writing quotes. Most of them couldn't be repeated on this podcast, but
nope.
But it's just kind of something for a little morale and everyone to kind of come together. And half the time there were quotes from players from the week before, like from playing cards or Xbox or whatever. Darnell said this or Kubiak said that. And, we just put it in quotes like it was somebody famous who said it 100 years ago. And we just get a kick out of it. But that's kind of how things went at Somerset. And Brett went right along with it.
Hope you guys are enjoying the podcast interview with Lucas Irvine. We're probably about 2/3 of the way through here in the second installment of the Untitled Mike Ashmore Podcast. Who's going to be on the third? I asked this in the first pod, didn't really get much of a response. Who do you guys want on? We're going to do more of these, so who do you guys want to hear from? Got a lot of people I can reach out to, but I kind of want to know who you guys want first. So love to hear from you, and I'd love to hear more from Luke Irvine, which we're going to do in about a second or two here. He won a championship with Sugarland in 2018. We're going to get to that, and we're kind of going to wrap things up a little bit as well to wrap up the second installment of the Untitled Mike Ashmore Podcast. Here's a little bit more with Luke Irvine from our chat.
To finally get that on-field championship in the Atlantic League, obviously you earned the one in 2015. If you didn't get to finish things out, how much did it mean to you to be a big part of that in 2018 over in Sugarland?
It was great, and it was surreal just because I came from the American Association, where it was great in the years past, but I just wasn't. The sequences were bad. I was coming off one of those years where I had a few of them where it's like, man, we have a real low point. We have like a low 6 weeks in our year here. That's making the stats look bad. So I was like, man, like kind of shuffling, reeling, whatever the word is, and then I'm on my way to BP one day, and Joe Calfitch calls like, hey, kid, I hate to say this, but we traded you to Sugarland. And when I heard traded, my heart sank. And then when I heard Sugarland, my pants fit a little tighter. And I was like, this is interesting. And I knew Donald was there. So I was like, well, Donald is one of my favorite coaches of all time, just because he's great in his own way, and it's hard to appreciate it until you get a few months with him. But he's a phenomenal pitching coach, especially at the indie ball level, for the wide range of guys that come through there. But so I knew that was going to be a decent situation. I was like, well, Pete's there. I'm pretty sure I took a swing at him one time, but it's baseball, it happens. So and it was no big deal. Pete welcomed me with open arms. He was great. Everyone was awesome. Everyone. They were great when I got there. So, but the true hero of Sugarland, and most people in the league know it by now, but Max, the trainer, is the glue to that place. I'm pretty sure he's been there since the first brick was laid. But he goes above and beyond. Mainly, like with what he does, the facilities, all the training, all the health availability is phenomenal, through the roof, great. But what he does for all the travel that Sugarland has to do too, he kind of wears the travel agent hat that he really doesn't have to, I don't think, in his contract, but he does so much for a crew of 30 guys who aren't real happy to be awake at 4 a.m. or whatever. He does a lot. So I just want to mention that is one of the best.
So let's break up some of this baseball talk here. We're almost done with that part of it anyway, but
nice.
Yeah, no, we're talking baseball for that long, but Sugarland. Can we both agree that Sugarland is the best road city in the Atlantic League?
Yes. I'm trying to think of some of the places that are no longer. Yeah. Sugarland for sure.
So I guess the question is, what's second?
I was going back and forth. York was great when we stayed downtown, because then it was all just kind of walking distance, restaurants, whatever. The York and Lancaster was always a lot of fun. Somerset, not that great to be on the road.
Yeah, and that's more based on the location of the hotel than as anything else.
Yeah. I would say either York or Lancaster. Probably York for me. But back in 15 and 17, when the hotel was, we stayed at, what was it called? The President or the Presidential or something? I don't know. Or the York Hotel.
Yorktown, the old Yorktown, the haunted hotel.
Yeah, and every room is different shapes, different lengths. Some have 2 toilets. It was built like back when the Quakers landed, in 18 whatever.
Yeah, when you check in and they give you a real key, you're
a real key. That was the next thing I was going to say. Like, is there a mailbox for this or something? Yeah, that was, and I think some of them had box televisions, even flat panel TVs in the rooms. But again, location is everything. So, we could walk to the White Rose, the whatever, there's the pizza shop and all that. It's being able to walk and just kind of have that freedom where you don't have to get 30 guys to convene on a bus is way easier. Just a little freedom on the road goes a long way. So
yeah, was there anywhere, could be American Association or anywhere maybe on the road where you just couldn't stand to go? Can be the Atlantic League too.
People always do it on Bridgeport. I never had a bad time at Bridgeport. It was nice. There wasn't a ton to do, but if you're willing to brave it, you can have a good time.
You had to know where to go and where not to go. There was always there's the unwritten rule for people who don't know. You could the ballpark in Bridgeport was close enough to the hotel where you could walk it, but it was never a good idea. So there's always kind of that unwritten rule where you would always kind of walk back with someone.
The buddy system, yeah. And that would break down as the hours of the night went on. But that was that. A lot of people didn't like that place, and I understand why. But I mean, there's what is it, Milford, right down the way?
Yeah, Milford was cool. Milford had some good spots. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was good. I did want to say, as far as best cities in the American Association, Fargo, North Dakota is a lot of fun. And don't ask me why. I just had a lot of good times there. And it's another situation where kind of their main strip of, bars, coffee shops, entertainment, restaurants, all that was where the hotel was. And it's a college town and all that, but just not a bad, the first 10 times, however many times I went, it was just a blast, and we had a good team, but just some of the phone calls that I get in the middle of the night. One teammate's like, "Hey, you need to come hang out. I'm at a trailer park." I was like, "Oh." He goes, "Yeah, but it has a basement." I was like, "I've never been to a trailer that has a basement, but anything's possible."
Yeah, I think I'll need the logistics to explain to me on that one in a separate podcast. But he
wanted me. This was pre-Uber, or maybe Uber existed, but not in North Dakota. And so he was trying to get a ride because poor fellow was lost. And just memories like that. And then even during the day, walking around, the coffee shops would always have live music and stuff. So Fargo, I tell everyone, it's a great little sleeper town. As far as not fun, I don't know why. I know it's real near Kansas City, but I've never liked Wichita, and everyone does. But you can miss me with Wichita. That was not a fun city for me, but I did like that it was only a 2-hour drive from Kansas City. So, but I just kind of like to hate on them just because, it's just something to do, and it's just, like Omaha, just towns talk. Like us in St. Louis, we always just talk trash back and forth. So, unless it's hockey, then we're all friends.
Yeah. So you grew up a Blues fan?
Yeah. When I played hockey, and they would come over to the Kemper Arena here in Kansas City and do some preseason stuff. And then we go to St. Louis during the season and as a team and watch a few games here and there. So, grew up a Blues fan, and grew up specifically not a Red Wings fan. Okay. I did not like those guys.
So what about the other teams? Were you a Kansas City guy, or were you a St. Louis guy for the other teams?
For as far as what, like other sports?
Yeah, baseball, football, yeah.
I grew up, as soon as I moved from Oklahoma to Kansas City and I saw a stadium for the first time in my life, I was like, my dad took me to the Chiefs game and, Royals games, and I was just in awe, when you're a little kid and you're 6 years old, you see a stadium. You're like, oh, okay, these are my new forever. And actually the Royals in the suburb I grew up in, they do at a baseball card shop. God, you would love it. Such a nerd, you would love it. But basically, their card shop looked like your man cave, and they would sit a Royals player down there for a couple hours every Saturday. And this was 5 blocks from my house, and they would sign cards. So I'd meet like Jermaine Dye, Joe Randa, just Johnny Damon, all these guys. They just come in, and so it was cool. It was amazing to see professional players and stuff. So yeah, definitely Royals Chiefs guy. And that's also converting from a Cowboys fan being in Oklahoma, and that was kind of hard to do, to convert to the Chiefs from a Cowboys fan. Leaving the Cowboys, that's hard to do, and being accepted as a Chiefs fan, it's kind of like when one person's Catholic and one person's like a Protestant and trying to get married. you know, who's going to come to the other side type thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I used to be a Cowboys fan. I my mistake. I was 4 years old. But, I grew up Chiefs Royals, for sure.
So you're a Blues fan and you're a Chiefs fan. This must be like the greatest year of your sports fandom ever.
Yeah. And, of course, several people pointed out, like, all of our victories, Missouri versus California lately, like, we're 3 or 4-0, right? Because the Royals beat the Giants, and then the Chiefs beat San Francisco, and then, the Blues beat San Jose, right?
Blues beat, yes, they get there, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't want to hear anything from California for a good long time, which actually in a lot of recent events we might not hear from anybody for a little while, but
yes.
no, that's my
yes.
Yeah, that's my. Well, that's what we're all saying here in Kansas City. Like, well, at least we're if they don't ever play football again, we're champs forever. But we really shouldn't joke like that. But that's just where we're at.
Yeah, you have no choice but to. So I guess what else are you doing these days? I know we talked about the DoorDash thing, but what are you doing these days to kind of keep busy in this time of quarantine?
Oh God, the video games, Mike. I can't even describe. First of all, my 2 roommates are. I don't know why they're not professional gamers. They may not be good enough, but they certainly put in the hours. And I will say Meat Hat has been not owning me. I've got a couple wins here and there, but NHL 20, man, I took too long off. I got into Fortnite, and I took 3 or 4 months off of hockey, and it just surpassed me. And but I'm getting back into it. I'll tell you what happened. I started playing online just by myself, playing other champs online, right? I got my record I won like 15 in a row. And I got my record to 17-2 or something. Of course, started spouting my mouth off, like letting everyone know who's boss. He beat me 5 games to 1 or 4 games to 1 in a 7-game series. So I went back to my little cave, back to the lab, I call it, and tried to learn some new moves. And it's the sprinting. It's the sprinting and the line management. My guys are always gassed, and this game. My brain's too tiny to like take on more commands to my fingers. I got Fortnite. I'm trying a little bit of this Call of Duty Warzone. I'm playing a puzzle game called Baba Is You on a Nintendo Switch right now. If you want to talk gaming, like how much time you got?
I've not heard of this game you mentioned, the Switch game. What is this?
Baba Is You. It's a puzzle game. I don't know if it's from the Witness guy or not. I don't think it is, but it's a puzzle game that uses a little bit of grammar, so you'd kind of like it. But it's just a spatial 2D, like old Game Boy style puzzle game that's super difficult. You control different characters, but then you control words and sentences to like make new rules so that you control different characters and different things. So I'm not doing a great job of describing it, but it's basically a 2D puzzle, and you have to like kind of get through a maze in layman's terms.
Okay, my buddies and I are playing a lot of it. It's a game called the Golf Club 2019 for PS4. You're an Xbox guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I don't know if they make it for Xbox or not, but we've been playing that a lot. It's $15 at Best Buy. We've been staying up till 4 or 5 in the morning playing it online just to kind of pass the time, and that's been helping out a lot. So I don't know if they make that for Xbox, but if they do, you might want to check that out.
What's the parameters of it? It's just called Golf 19, or what'd you call it?
The Golf Club 2019. It's just a lot of real course. It's like a golf simulation, basically.
But okay, so are you just playing like thumbsticks and all that? You're not actually like swinging the.
Yeah, no, it's not like Wii or anything. It's just thumbsticks.
Okay.
It's basically the golf version of NHL. So.
Oh, I would love that. Back when I was at Northwestern in Louisiana, me and my roommates, we played Tiger Woods. I think I guess it would have been 10 or 11 back then. But oh my God, the hours and the intensity, and we put it on tournament style greens where they were just slick as ice, and the golf games. I even played on Sega. I used to play whatever Sega put out with PGA, so I'd be interested in that if they offer.
Yeah, for sure, man. So I hear you're watching some AEW as well. I know you went to a show recently.
Oh God, I am hooked. I feel like a girl who goes on a date, like, this guy has no chance. but I'm just going to entertain this idea. And that's how I felt. Like, I was the girl. Like, I'm not, like, and I'd been to a WWE, and it was good, but it was a lot of talking. So all the commentary kind of, like, put me to sleep or whatever. AEW, way different. Way more intimate. We were at I forget the name of the theater, but it's where the Mavericks play hockey, our minor league hockey team. We were at their stadium or arena, and it holds maybe 5,000 or something. I'm not, or 2,000, I don't know. But it was the perfect setting for this, like, intimate, close up, but still, you know, stadium style, and all action. Almost no talking. And my friends who I was with, they were trying to they said we should have done a reaction video of me, because seeing all that athleticism up close, and they literally are within centimeters of actually, like, snapping each other's necks, like, every 8 seconds. And my reactions, because, you know, I'm getting a little older, you know, my ankle, oh, how's his back? Like, my knee. Like, every time they do something, I'm like, he's going to be in so much pain tomorrow. Like, that's all I could think of for, like, the first hour. But I seen him in Kenny Omega. Oh, my Lord. And he fought Pac, and I think you tweeted that night, right?
Yes.
Oh, that Iron Man, that's what it's called, right?
Yeah, Iron Man.
30-minute
That's 30
Iron
minute
Man match.
Yeah, it was great.
Oh, the athleticism. And these guys have been, like, no offense to Kenny, but he's not a spring chicken. Like, he's been doing it a long time over in Japan. And one of the guys I was with, I didn't know. I was standing next to him. Like, as he was walking out, he goes, "You're about to see the best wrestler in the world." And this guy's super wrestling nerd. And, like, I got a little chub. I was like, oh, okay, well, let's see what's up. And that was, like, the second or third match. Like, we saw the After Dark, like, the pre-show.
Yeah.
And then it was, like, the first and second match. So, and even Nathan Meathead, he was like, oh, like, the whole crowd's going insane. And me, I have no idea. It's like going to a movie and you don't even know if it's like a horror movie or a comedy. You know, it's like, I don't even know what's going on. And it all unfolded in front of me. And I was like, and I've been to Cirque du Soleil this year. I've been to, you know, concerts, sporting events. I've been to the Celebration Chiefs Parade. And AEW takes the cake by far. And it might be in my top 5 things I've ever seen, especially sporting. But the sounds, the choreography, the attitude, the storylines. Dusty Rhodes came out, got his ass kicked with a trash can, like out where I just bought a beer, you know. And I was like, these guys, they must be 55 years old. Like, you saw the weigh-in, right?
Yes.
Oh my God, the weigh-in and not Jericho, but who's the guy with the eye patch at the time?
Jon Moxley.
Oh, Moxley, God, Kansas City had a hard on for him. And they didn't tell me, or they were trying to tell me, but I wasn't comprehending because, again, tiny brain. But they were like, oh, yeah, this one guy, he's going to have an eye patch forever now. And I was like, that's a ballsy storyline. And then they were telling me that he comes in from, like, not the main area. He always comes in a different, like,
through the crowd, yeah.
Entry. Yeah, and so, like, when he came, like, people were going crazy, and I'm, like, looking at the entrance, and I'm like, what's going on? And he came in, like, right by us to the last, and it was crazy. But, and then, like, when he was coming in, Dusty Rhodes was getting tossed around, and I was like, man, I've heard some stories about Goldust. I didn't even know he was still alive.
Yes.
And apparently, his son is doing on AEW tonight, they have some sort of drinking game. Every time somebody says something, you got to take a drink. So
the Cody Rhodes commentary drinking game. Yes, that's how much I love you, by the way, Lukey, is shut off Dynamite to do this podcast with you.
Yeah, and actually, I got in trouble for missing it as well. The roommates are probably in there watching it, and if they're playing along with the drinking game, I might have babysitting duty.
Yeah, you might be better off for having missed that one. Let's be honest here. So.
Yeah, but no, just to put a bow on the AEW thing, like, I can't wait to go again. They've given me no money to say any of this. I genuinely went to it thinking I might be a little bored, mildly entertained, and I was, like, screaming at the top of my lungs. I was chanting stuff that I have no idea what it means. Like, when Orange Cassidy came out, oh my God, he's a heartthrob, right? That
yes.
kid, he can wrestle forever, right?
Yes.
He does nothing, and people eat it up. And then, of course, we get home, and Meathead's showing me his old, some old Orange Cassidy stuff where he's, like, wrestling girls at a bar and stuff. Like, it's in a ring, but in a bar.
Yeah.
And it's phenomenal, and people just eat it up. And for people who don't know, like, what this guy does is, and he's an incredibly talented wrestler. Let me get that out of the way. But he does basically nothing, and he like puts his hands in his pockets when he wrestles people, and he basically, how would you describe it? Like, he just kind of gets out of the way and does something real quick, and then just does nothing. And,
it's like a slacker gimmick, I guess you could say.
Yeah, for sure. But the hands in the pocket, it's so hilarious. But then, like, when you think about it, the moves he pulls off with his hands in his pockets, it's just, the athleticism is phenomenal. It's like if I stretch before a game, it's like, somebody come give me a hand up. You know what I mean? And this guy's got his hands in his pocket doing, like, backflips. As someone who used to love wrestling when I was very young, and then, you know, kind of got out of it for a while and getting back into it, just seeing the evolution of it, and this AEW thing where it's mostly just action and a lot of, you know, hungry, talented people trying to move up in the ranks. It's really incredible to watch. And with me being an independent baseball player for most of my career, I see a lot of parallels. And as you know, like Jericho and guys come down from the WWE, and they're kind of like the vets, like Kenny Omega, who came from Japan. And they're kind of the vets of that league, and I think they help a lot of the younger people out, too. I don't know the ins and outs of it, like my circle of friends, but it's fascinating, and just, honestly, the athleticism and the durability, because at the end of the show, I'm thinking, oh my God, the hospital is going to be full tonight. And they're like, well, we'll see you tomorrow night in Columbia, Missouri. And they're going to like do it again in a night or two. And I'm just like, oh my God.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Unreal. So definitely a fan, or I'm back into wanting to learn and be a formidable fan. Yeah. But yeah, I was chanting, I was doing everything.
Well, I think I've killed most of your night, so we're going to start to wrap it up. I do want to ask you, it sounds like you're coming back to High Point this year. I don't know if we can say that or not, but we'll pretend that we can. How excited are you that you're getting another chance to get another year under your belt?
I'm really excited, and as I was throwing, I know I've had a few days off, but getting into my throwing program this year, even more so. You never know when you take 4 months off for the first time in a while. You're going to bounce back, rest. And after my first week, I was like for sure excited. And I shouldn't even say this, but I may have talked to Dwayne Below and a few guys, and I might try to hit 95 or 96 this year if I'm going to be out of the bullpen. That's how good I was feeling. So when I top out at 91, y'all can laugh at me, but I feel really good. I feel really excited where my body's at, where my arm's at. I hope that the new rules in the league are manageable and they don't take too much away. I know some of them are borderline like that, and I'm trying to be as nice as possible. So, but yeah, I'm very excited from a personal standpoint, physically, mentally, in a much better place just because I've had time to regroup. So, very excited, and yeah, I haven't inked that contract, but it was pretty much verbally done, and then the coronavirus stuff started setting in, so things are a little discombobulated, and but we'll get it done, and we got bigger things to worry about than signing Lucas Irvine right now, but yeah, I have confidence that it'll get done, and I really like the guys they've announced so far. It's like, wow, these are all my great friends, and they're all great ball players. So I think the chemistry, which is a big part of High Point, I think it'll be really good again this year.
Well, I'd love to ask you what your favorite Mike Ashmore story is, but dang it, Lukey, we're all out of time.
All right, well, I could talk for another 7 days, so have a couple more better, smarter guests on, and then bring me back to kind of level things off, and then, you've inspired me. We were seriously talking about doing a podcast ourselves. It's going to be a little more risque, but we have a storage spot in our basement that is absolutely perfect to be decked out like a gamer studio, with some lights and some soundproofing. And it's definitely going to have a wrestling theme. So.
Well, I look forward to coming on that and using a 4-letter word every 10th word I use, and then getting fired over it. So I'm very much looking forward to that. So.
Well, I was glad I could keep it clean, and I know I talk way too much, but thanks for having me on. I think this is great. I know the circumstances aren't ideal, but I love when people are creative, and I love podcasts. So as a DoorDasher and a baseball player, podcasts are pretty much 6 hours of my day every day. So anyway, keep it up. Love all the work you do. You're an absolute grinder. People who don't even know you, meatheads, like, that dude grinds. And I'm like, yeah, he absolutely does. And you've been all over the world, or at least all over the nation, to every sporting event ever. So real honored to be number 2 on here. Although I did request number 1. Pat beat me out, apparently. But we'll call that a soft opening, like all the casinos do.
Well, the next time I start something new, we'll make sure that you're number 1 at it, but only if you can beat me in NHL.
My vanity is important, okay?
Yes.
So, no, but again, thanks for having me on. I thought Pat did a great job too. So, big honor. Whoever's listening, thanks for all the support. And next time I'm on, I'll have a plug from my podcast. It's hard to buy stuff right now because Amazon's 3 weeks behind, but we're going to try to set up something ourselves.
All right, Lukey, appreciate it, man. One of my all-time favorite people, Lucas Irvine. Glad to have you on the podcast, man, and stay safe going forward. All right, bud?
Appreciate it. Look forward to it. Talk soon.
Thank you guys so very much for listening/watching that for as long as y'all did. I told Lukey that it would be about 15 to 20 minutes. We ended up talking for about 2 hours. So, yes, there were a few things that were cropped out of there and cut out and all that kind of stuff. But I really hope you guys get to know him a little bit better. Maybe some of the fun part of this can be kind of maybe bringing a bit of a spotlight to guys who maybe ordinarily wouldn't necessarily get it. I know the focus on the Atlantic League, and I'm guilty of this as much as anybody is on big league guys. But Luke's got some great stories. I'm glad you guys got to hear them, and I'm really excited to see what we're going to do next on this podcast. So thank you all again for listening and watching and all that stuff, and I will talk to you guys soon. Everybody, please stay safe, stay home, and wash your damn hands.